Hello friends, it's Dave here from SaveDex. Now, last year I visited a technology museum. They had an area filled with a lot of consoles ranging from the Atari up to the Xbox, GameCube, PS2 era. It made me feel so old seeing a GameCube in a museum. The consoles were playable, and one of the NES consoles had Super Mario Bros. Every time I see that game, I just have to play it. Now, this was the first time I'd played this game with an actual NES controller in probably about 15 years, and it wasn't until then that I really noticed what a difference it makes having the correct controller. So, being well practiced at this game, I knew exactly what I wanted to do at this museum. But that story I will save until the end of this video, so make sure you stick around there. I want to talk first about this game in general. Now, I could talk about how amazing this game is, just how much fun it is, how clever the level design is, and just how important this game was to the industry as a whole. But you most likely know it all by now. It's been talked about so many times before. What I want to do today is share my stories, my experience, my memories of this game. We all have our own tales of how we viewed certain games as a child, and here is how I viewed Super Mario Bros. On the NES. So this here is the cartridge that came with the NES. It contains 3 games, and that is Tetris, Nintendo World Cup, and the game that we played more than the other 2, Super Mario Bros. I don't actually remember the first time I personally played this game, but I do remember the first time I saw someone play it, that person being my brother. It was his NES after all, so it made sense that he got to play it first. He jumped on that brown enemy, got a mushroom, which for some reason I knew it would make him bigger. I must have been told beforehand. He jumped over those pipes and he went down the 4th one into the secret room and cleared the level. I vividly remember seeing that for the first time. Mario games are known for their secrets, and the first time I saw this game, I witnessed a secret that lets you skip most of the level. This is significant for me because every time I played the game in the early days, I always used that pipe thinking it was the way. It was a while before I realised that you could go beyond that pipe and there was a whole level there, with turtles and a hidden star. As iconic as 1-1 is as a whole, this area beyond the pipe still feels weird to me, like it's a section that was added to the game later on. I mentioned turtles just now. Well, that's just what I called them. They look like turtles to me. It wasn't long before I learnt they were called Koopa Troopers, but they're not the only enemies that we called by the wrong name. I mean, I didn't really look at the instruction books back then, so I just had to call things as I saw them, really. I did get some enemy names right. I knew from my brother the correct names for bullet bills, piranha plants, buzzy beetles and hammer brothers, although for the longest time I thought the hammer brothers were meant to be monkeys, but Goombas we called Gombas. I never noticed the second O until I was 11. Koopa Troopers and Paratroopers were turtles and flying turtles, Bloopers and Cheep Cheeps were jellyfish and fish, Bowser was simply called the Dragon, and I think the catchiest name we had for any of the villains was Falakatu. He was simply known as the Cloud that drops baddies. We should have been put in charge of naming characters. This was also a time where my parents would sometimes play Nintendo. My mum would mostly play Tetris, and the only time I ever remember seeing her play Mario, she was jumping up these last stairs one at a time. My dad did play on this game quite a bit, and I always enjoyed watching other people play even if I wasn't playing myself, but I got to know this game so well, I didn't even need to watch. If it was late at night and I was in bed, I could hear him playing in the next room. I didn't need to see what was going on, I could hear the music, I could hear the sound effects, I knew exactly what he was doing and where he was just from the sounds. And what sound would I hear quite often from him? That death sound was usually followed by my dad saying, "I pressed A and he wouldn't bloody jump." And to this day, my brother and I still quote that. Whenever we mess up at any game, even if there is no A button and no jumping, it's always press A and he wouldn't bloody jump. 1-2 is where we had a bit of a knack for finding secrets, as I would just smash every block to see what there was. There's a hidden block here I remember discovering. We always called these blocks bouncy ups for some reason. There was also a warp zone, which I will talk about more later, but we knew about it early on. I remember once asking my brother on this level, what happens when you get a mushroom when you're already big? I imagined you'd get even bigger. He said it's just a flower that appears, and then he showed me. But he didn't get it. We thought it was just meant to be a nice decoration. Eventually, we knew what it did. It turned Mario into Luigi, and then he could shoot fireballs. Obviously, I know now that he is still Mario, but because Luigi wore white back then, I always referred to Fire Mario as Luigi with firing power. I really should have been put in charge of naming things. The castle stages I quite liked, where you got to fight the dragon, who we would later know as King Koopa from the cartoon, and then later on Bowser. And then after that you'd meet the Mushroom Man, which is what we knew Toad as back then. He would tell you that the princess is in another castle, and I knew nothing about the princess, other than the fact that she could fly, and whoever told me that was obviously referring to her floating in Mario 2, but I always imagined that when you rescue her, she would just fly away afterwards. In World 2, what I remember most was the beanstalk, where my brother said we'd have to fight a giant up there, but luckily we didn't. And also Level 2, being the sea, with all those jellyfish and fish floating around. It was a mind-blowing discovery that you could actually shoot fire under the sea and kill them. This was as far as we could get in the game for a long time, and my brother claimed he had gotten past it and told me to guess what the next level is like. I guessed the jungle, and he told me I was right, and at the end is a gorilla that ate you up. I actually believed him. When I eventually saw the next level, just before it loaded, he told me it actually had flying fish. I thought he was making that up, but turns out he was right, and I found it funny, even if I didn't get very far in it. I don't have much to say about World 3, as I didn't play it a whole lot thanks to us using the warp zone to World 4, although it being nighttime did stand out. When we got to World 4 though, we would mostly see just the first 2 levels, as there was another warp zone to World 8, so I really don't have a lot to say about Worlds 5, 6 and 7 since I don't have a lot of memories of them. The only 2 things I remember about World 5 as a child was my brother missing this mushroom, and I said to him, "You missed the mushroom," and he said, "My name isn't Mr. Mushroom." I still to this day can never not hear that pun whenever I hear anyone use the phrase Mr. The. Also, 5-3 is basically 1-3 with a load of bullet bills, and I remember us taking ages to get to the end of that level just to see what this giant cannon looked like, but sadly there wasn't one. World 8 is a world I saw a lot of. Those giant pits in particular I found really difficult, although now I can just breeze past them. I remember the first time seeing the final castle and going down every pipe, working out which one was which. My brother got to the final dragon before I did, and it looked so hard and he didn't make it past him. Then he got game over, and we had to leave to go and see Beauty and the Beast at the cinema. Eventually we managed to beat the game, and as time went on, my new mission wasn't just to beat the game, but to beat the game as Luigi with firing power. As we knew, the dragon turned into a random enemy every time he got shot, but what would the last one turn into, we wondered. One evening I was downstairs and my brother came running down and said, "The dragon turns upside down, I just did it." I didn't know what he meant at first until he ran to my mum and said, "I just shot the dragon on 8-4. I eventually managed to do it myself, and I eventually managed to beat the game without warping. I got pretty good at it. And that was really my memories of the game as a child, but the story does not stop there, because in my uni years, this console came out. And with it, a virtual console, and I could not resist buying Super Mario Bros. On here as well. And this was a time where I started to notice speedrunners on YouTube, so I thought I'll give it a go. It's really the only game I've ever tried speedrunning. The fastest time I ever managed was 6 minutes 52 seconds. But I'm not really a speedrunner is the conclusion to that story. One time when Sophie and I were at an arcade, I saw Super Mario Bros. There. I was like, oh, watch me beat this in one go. Put my money in. I didn't realise the game was going to be a bit different. That really threw me off, and I've never forgiven it. It is on the Switch eShop now, versus Super Mario Bros. I have it. I've not beaten it still, as I am determined to do it on only one credit, and one day I will defeat it. So to bring my story full circle, let's go back to that museum where I had my plan. Because, as you may or may not know, if you beat the game, you can replay it in a harder difficulty. Goombas become Buzzy Beetles, enemies move faster, and some platforms become smaller. There are a lot of younger people at this museum. Some of them seemed very cocky. They were like scoffing at these older games. They're too basic, they're too easy. I saw this one kid playing on Mario Kart Double Dash and he was saying to his dad, oh, this is a really old Mario Kart game. It's way too easy, it's rubbish and all that. Even though he came 5th on 50cc. So what did I do? I picked up Super Mario Bros. And I beat the game. Yeah, it took me a few attempts, but I managed it. Then I put the controller down and left it displayed there. And I stood back and watched these people try and play this really old Mario game that's too basic. Not knowing that they were being thrown into the harder version of the game. None of them got past the second level. So, those were my memories of Super Mario Bros. I'm sure you all have stories to tell. Let me know in the comments down below what specific memories you have of this game. That's kind of like why I wanted to do these videos, because just to tell my own unique story of it. I've already got one of Wave Race 64 on the channel, so check that one out. And I've got more in the works in the future, so make sure you subscribe to not miss any. If you notice any games behind me you want me to tell my stories of, let me know in the comments down below as well, and I will have a look and see if I can cobble together some stories about them. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I will see you in the next one.